You're listening to the official Minnesota Wild podcast, presented by Acrisure.
It's Wild Weekly on the Fan.
Pass it from Kaprizov, Johnson scored!
Now here to talk about the Minnesota Wild and the NHL. From the Wild, Kevin Falness. And from the Fan, Brandon Mileski.
Hey, good morning. Saturday morning edition of KFAN Wild Weekly. I am Brandon Mileski. Kevin Falness from the Wild Radio Network joins me as always. Good morning, Kevin.
What? This is supposed to be Beyond the Pond. What are you doing here?
Oh, we thought we'd try to improve it a little bit. The bosses have told me how much they're not liking the current edition of Beyond the Pond. And
how rude.
We'll have Micheletti on next segment anyway, so you guys can both get your opinions in. Good.
I like it. That should be fun.
Pretty eventful week for the Minnesota Wild, right? It starts off with some not-so-good news about a week ago about Kirill Kaprizov needing surgery. He's going to be out for 4 weeks minimum, and that's not great news after he'd already missed a month. And we'll get to that in a second. But how about the game Thursday night in Montreal, Kevin? I think we all knew that the emotions were going to be flying with Marc-Andre Fleury playing in front of his hometown fans, his friends, his family, and that there'd be emotions. He gets the start on the second of a back-to-back. But, man, to cap it off with a shutout, especially kind of he didn't really get tested in the first two periods there, but the flurry of saves he had to make on that one sequence in the third period, and to have the fans chanting his name, even though it's not even their hometown team. I thought that was a pretty cool moment that you don't see too often in hockey or in sports in general.
No, that was a hell of a night. I can't put into words how cool that was. And he continues to live up to the moments. I know that the trip to Pittsburgh earlier this year, that was emotional. He got the win in that one, and the crowd serenaded him the entire contest. Whatever game it was that he passed Patrick Waugh and he got his 500th win, these moments just continue to bring out the best of him, and Thursday night was a prime example. I mean, that was vintage Marc-Andre Fleury, kicking out the pads and stacking the pads and just doing ridiculous things that you would never teach a goaltender how to play the position by doing these things, but he's the guy that has thrived on doing this for the better part of 2 decades. And Thursday night, I just thought was just a perfect ending to a Hall of Fame career. Now, I know that there's still lots of games left in the season, and hopefully he's going to be between the pipes for a lot of them. But his final trip to Montreal as a player in the National Hockey League and to be able to get that type of reception was incredible. And then the handshake line after the game. I was going to bring that up, yeah. Where the entire opposing team, like it was the end of a playoff series, going and they all physically shake his hand, make eye contact with him. I mean, it was just cool start to finish, and that I don't know that I'll ever experience anything like that again.
And the coaching staff out there waiting for him as well. Yeah, I mean, it was
crazy.
You just don't see that. And on top of that, Kevin, he's having a darn good season, right? He the last season or two, the numbers weren't as good, and it kind of made sense why he was retiring. He was looking a little bit older, but he's having a renaissance season here in his final season. Thursday night, he became the first goaltender ever to have a shutout as a teenager and a shutout as a 40-year-old or older. I mean, it's astonishing a guy that age is playing at that level.
572 wins, 76 shutouts. Think about that. I mean, just wrap your brain around those types of numbers. And, I mean, I don't believe that this is his last year. I know he says it is, and even all throughout yesterday.
Well, it has to be after Thursday night. You can't do that. You can't do that with that crowd. And then
I agree.
Oh, I'm coming back.
I agree, but look at how he's playing. He's not playing like a 40-year-old goaltender.
No.
They're not supposed to be able to do this at 40 years. Now, 40 is not that old, except in the terms of a professional athlete. And he's playing one of the hardest positions in all of sports, and yet he looks like a kid. He acts like a kid. He exudes the energy of someone in his 20s. How he's going to hang him up after what he's been able to put together this year is beyond me. He says he's in the right headspace, and he's come to terms with it, and he's going out, and this is going to be his fond farewell. But, man, what does he do a year from now when he's feeling like this and he's looking back and saying, I could be on the ice? I don't know how he says that's it.
He's going to retire, and then some team like Pittsburgh or Minnesota is going to be in a playoff chase, and their goalie goes down, and he's going to come in middle of the season and
like Superman.
come save the season. All right, let's talk about the negative story from the past week, Kevin. That would be Kirill Kaprizov. They announced that he needs surgery. And with that lower body injury, he was already out for a month, and they made it seem like it wasn't that serious, that they're just being cautious with him throughout that time. But not great for the season he was having, for the season this team was having. That was some tough news to take.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the best players on earth and certainly the best player on the franchise. You go those 12 games without him, he comes back and he plays those 3 contests. And you could tell, I was hoping it was just rust, especially in the first game, and it never got better. And so he finally, apparently Kaprizov and the management just talked about it and said, let's get this rectified now. He's going to miss up to 4, maybe even more than 4 weeks. But 2 of that is during the Four Nations tournament, so hopefully that helps soften the blow a little bit. But, I mean, the way this team is going right now, they've been getting it done by committee, and they're going to have to continue to do that into the Four Nations break and coming out of it until they get him back, because they need him. I mean, and hopefully this will solve whatever it is that he's doing, whatever he's dealing with, because he's going to be available for that last push. And the way the standings are breaking out, they're going to need him for that final push.
Yeah, when a guy like Kaprizov and how much he means to this team goes out, right, you mentioned the committee approach. You're also going to need to have phenomenal goaltending and phenomenal defense. And at least in those first 2 games since that news, they've gotten that, right? I mean, Gustafsson was really good the other night in Toronto. Obviously, we just talked about Fleury in the shutout he had Thursday night in Montreal. Goaltending has been good. Defense has been good. And they're getting scoring. I don't know if this is sustainable, but Husnudinov with the goal in Toronto the other night on a great play by Lacko, great forecheck. And then the other night in Montreal, Shore, Ogren, right? I mean, these guys are going to have to contribute occasionally.
Yeah, and the defense too. The what they've been able to get from the blue line in helping in that secondary scoring, it's been nothing short of remarkable. It's incredible. They're on this 3-game win streak. This is coming off a stretch where they had lost 5 of 6, and they looked terrible on Hockey Day, Minnesota. They looked even worse against the Utah Hockey Club on home ice. So the answer is go off and kick off a 5-game road trip, and they've won the first 3 games. Hopefully, it continues tonight in Ottawa.
I've had Common ask me on the program to explain the difference between the road and the home record. I don't. I get you can do the old, hey, you tend to try to do more at home and play a different style of hockey. But, I mean, what they're doing on the road, they are the 4th fastest team to 20 road wins in the history of the National Hockey League.
Yeah, 25-3 away from St. Paul. They won 4 straight on the road and 8 of their last 10. Meanwhile, they're under 500 at XL Energy Center, which is unheard of. Even when they were a bad team, they always had results on home ice. Not this year, and it's been just a backward situation.
I do have concerns about a little bit of a hangover tonight against Ottawa after all the emotion Thursday night in Montreal, and that game in Toronto was the first game without Kirill Kaprizov, so I'm a little concerned how they're going to respond tonight. But Wild take on the Ottawa Senators tonight, 6 o'clock pregame with Kevin Falness at 5:45. We'll talk with Kevin's co-host on Beyond the Pond. That would be Pat Micheletti. We'll chat with him next right here on KFAN Wild Weekly.
Another giveaway and a quick shot by Anderson. Stopped by Fleury. Rebound in the slot. Loose puck. Anderson a try and a right shoulder save by Fleury. Stopped him 3 times here on this shift alone. Struble to the blue line. Right side. Broken stick for Hartman. A long shot by Struble, tipped wide in front. Canadiens making their proverbial push as they center. Sprawling stop by Fleury, a 2-pad slide as he robbed Anderson again. Now a point try by Anderson, and that one went wide. Boy, the Flower putting on a show in the 3rd on this sequence alone.
Hey, welcome back to a Saturday morning edition of KFAN Wild Weekly, taking the place of Beyond the Pond today because both Kevin Falness and Pat Micheletti are too lazy to come in, but they are at least going to talk to me for this segment. Kevin, Pat, how are you doing?
I miss you, Brandon.
Do you?
I don't see you as often as I'd like. Not on the air with you as much as I'd like.
Yeah.
And you stuck me with Kevin.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's okay too. That's okay. I don't get me wrong, but I miss you, Brandon. Good to talk to you.
Yes, I don't know if you really miss me or you just hate having to work with Kevin. I'm not really sure where that lies, but. The highlight we just heard, Marc-Andre Fleury on Thursday night back in his hometown in front of family and friends, and a 4-0 shutout win for the Wild. And that's a pretty rare moment that happened Thursday night, Pat, in that, right? You have the opposing crowd on the road is chanting the player's name of a guy who's shutting out their own team. It was kind of a crazy, surreal moment.
How lucky are the Minnesota Wild to have a icon like that in their net? And my second question would be, are we sure he should retire?
He's playing well.
The way that he's playing. I mean, he's playing fabulous hockey. And no, you could not have scripted it any better last night than what we saw. it was fabulous. And so, just great to see.
You say how lucky are the Wild. I say how lucky are the Wild fans. I was in Denver when the Quebec Nordique moved and became the Avalanche, and in that transition, they ended up getting Patrick Waugh. And I remember what it was like covering Waugh at that time. This doesn't even compare to that. What we're watching with Marc-Andre Fleury, it's like watching a legend at work. And I hope, as much as you say the Wild are lucky to have him, I hope the fans have an appreciation for just what the impact is for this guy on this league, on this sport, on this franchise. It's amazing.
Well, I mean, and look at the personality of the guy. I mean, he's one of the nicest human beings, one of the most humble human beings, one of the most fun guys to be around. He's everything that you're looking in an athlete, in a hockey player. And, you're right, Kevin. It's the Minnesota fans are being treated to greatness.
Pat, you last Fleury question probably, but you joked about, are we sure this guy should be retiring? And he's having a very good season, right? His numbers his numbers are right on par with Gustafsson. Gustafsson went through a little bit of a stretch there in January where he lost 4 in a row and was giving up 4, 5, 6 goals a game. Now he's rebounded the last 2 and had a really good game the other night in Toronto, but. I also wonder if Fleury warranted more playing time, right? This was considered kind of a 1 and a 2 situation. I'm almost wondering if we should just be splitting the net with these two the way Fleury's going.
Why not? And you have a winning combination going, and I don't know for sure if Gustafsson can handle, especially when we get down the stretch here, where every point, not that every point isn't important from the beginning of the season, but really critical points now, and to maintain where you are or try to finish a little higher or whatever the case may be, that's where you start to feel a lot of pressure. Maybe Gustafsson felt that a little bit. Maybe he was off. Maybe he was sick. Maybe the team wasn't playing as well. But Fleury has certainly made John Hines feel like, okay, if we have a little stumble here, we've got Fleury, and he's playing fabulous.
Well, obviously the Fleury stuff from Montreal was incredible. Not great news earlier in the week, though, when the Wild announced Kirill Kaprizov is going to miss at least a month with a lower body injury, having surgery to have it fixed, and he'll miss the better part of a month, if not more. And meanwhile, the response was they go to Toronto, get the victory, and then shout out the Montreal Canadiens. This team has been, I know the phrase road warriors is thrown around, but 20 wins on the road, 31 wins all season, 20 on the road. Now they've won 4 straight away from XL Energy Center. It's amazing what they're able to cobble together tonight, right now, without their best player on the roster.
Yeah, I was hoping for a split on the road, get to the Four Nations Cup, get some rest, and retool. But they say, you know what? Screw that, we're going to win. And they've won 3 of the 5 thus far, 5 total on the road before they get to the Four Nations Cup. But, I can't explain it. I don't think you guys can explain it. I don't think anybody can explain it, that, their success on the road. And you have to be able to win on the road, A, if you want to make the playoffs, and B, get, potentially home ice. So, it's a tough one to explain, guys. It really is.
Well, how about the Kaprizov side of that, though, right? He's going to be missing 4 weeks minimum here after already missing a month. They've won 2 without him, and I think they know the style, that road style of play is almost the style they have to play without Kaprizov in the lineup. But do you think they're going to be able to hold on here? I know they got themselves a 10-point cushion on Vancouver, but without Kaprizov in the lineup, what's the style of play they're going to have to play here to kind of sustain the success?
Well, I was worried going into the trip, to be quite honest with you. After we found out the news, because I'm like, okay, where are they going to get their scoring? Well, in Montreal, right? They get goals from Shore, and who was the other one who scored?
Liam Ogren.
Yeah, and so they need contributions from other guys in the lineup, from guys that are lower in the lineup. Now, you don't expect those guys to score every night, because that's why they are bottom 6 players. But you're going to continue to need contributions from guys like that if you're going to continue to win. Because Boldy and Zuccarello and Eck, you want them to score every night. Guess what? Some nights are going to get shut out. So you're really going to need help from your other guys in the lineup.
Well, one of those guys you just mentioned did score on Thursday night, opened the scoring for the Wild in Montreal in Liam Ogren. Had probably his worst experience in hockey at the beginning of this stretch. I think he was a -4 early on in his recall from Iowa, but it seems like he's taken off since then and capped with the goal in Montreal, his first of the season, second of his NHL career. What have you thought about Ogren as he continues to get more comfortable in his skin?
Well, I think – I'm going to go back to when Brock Faber first signed, and they put him in the lineup right away, right? I think he played one game against Chicago and was in the lineup for Game 1 against Dallas in that opening round. And if you watch Brock Faber, then yes, he played well, but he was tentative and he was out there to not make a mistake. And then he went into his second year and he just said, I'm going to play. And so I think when you look at Liam Ogren, it was like he was up there and initially to not make a mistake, finish your check, just as Bill Guerin pronounced it, robot hockey. And now I think Guerin talked to him a little bit and said, just go out and play. And you can see the talent that he has when he's just free-flowing. Be a little bit more free-flowing. And each game, I think now he's starting to get there. And that would be, if you can't make a trade, to have a guy like him emerge, I think is going to be critical and really, really good for this team.
Talking with Pat Micheletti, co-host of Beyond the Pond with Kevin Falness. They'll be back next Saturday at 10 a.m. right here on the Fan. Marco Rossi is second on the team in points at 46, also tied for second in goals with 18. I'm curious what your long-term view of him is, Pat, because there's still trade rumors with him that he's going to demand a contract extension probably in the offseason, going to get a raise, whether you want to pay him or not. How do you view him long-term? And I've heard that Brock Nelson coming here in the offseason, those rumors flying around. How do you view Rossi, and do you want him as a Minnesota Wild member long-term?
Boy, first I'm going to say this. I think he's made tremendous strides. He's worked really hard. He's doing a lot of the right things. Am I sold on him long-term? I am still not. I would have to see him perform in the playoffs and be able to handle the grind that's going to be the playoffs, how much tougher it's going to be in the playoffs. He's a top 6 guy now. He's close to a point a game, but he's not a point a game. And so I'm not completely sold on it. But I'm willing to, let it play out a little bit and see where he potentially could take it. Yes, his name is still being popped around as trade bait. And I'll take it a step further and talk about trades, Brandon, because, you look at the salary cap, and I think Minnesota, as of Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever it was, had $39,000 available. And you say, well, you can't make a trade. Well, that was proven wrong with the deal that Philadelphia and Calgary just made, because players have that ability to waive their no move. Now, it's certainly the player's right to say, no, I'm not going to, but you have that ability. That is still there. And if the player says, okay, I'm good with it, yes, then you can make a trade. So I'm not ruling out that potentially happening with this Minnesota Wild team.
All right, Patrick, we got Gopher basketball coming up here shortly. Then later on tonight, stop 4 of the 5-game road trip, Wild in Ottawa to take on the Senators. We know what a wagon the Wild have been on the road. This Ottawa Senators team has been a little bit of a surprise in the East. Maybe not a surprise, but I look at the Atlantic Division. They're sitting in 3rd place there. They've won 3 straight. They just took down the Washington Capitals on Thursday night in come-from-behind fashion as they won in overtime. What should we expect tonight as the Wild try to keep it going?
I've been waiting for Ottawa for the last 3 years. When you look at their lineup every year, you say, how how can this team not make the playoffs? Well, I think they were a little bit young 3 years ago, and I look at their mentality now, and they got a guy, Brady Tkachuk, who's their captain, and he, like his brother Matthew in Florida, is a gamer. And I think everyone is kind of following his lead. And guess what? They're a talented group. They're a little bit more mature than they used to be. And so it's going to be a tough game because Ottawa will make the playoffs this year finally, and they're a good team. So it never gets easy. Never gets easy.
Pat, great to talk to you again. Always enjoy chatting with you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Brandon. Thanks, Kevin.
All right,
see you, Patrick. Pat
Micheletti, co-host of Beyond the Pond, with the great Kevin Falness. And Kevin, your work is not over for the day. You'll be back tonight as the Wild take on the Ottawa Senators at 6 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, I'm going to go squeeze in a nap. Pregame at 5:45. Puck drops just after 6 o'clock. Actually, it's a 6:15 puck drop tonight from Canadian Tire Center. So kind of an extended pregame, but it should be fun as we continue to recap all the fun from Thursday night in Montreal and get ready to drop the puck against the Sens.
Yeah, why don't you go hit a bucket of balls, come back for tonight, and then 3 games next week, and then you get 2 weeks off.
That's true. You know what? I'm going to squeeze in a nap, and then I'll be back in the Bob Church Radio Center. We'll be ready to go.
All right. Thanks as always, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon.
He's Kevin Falness. I'm Brandon Mileski. This has been another episode of KFAN Wild Weekly. Like I said, Wild versus Ottawa pregame at 5:45 with Kevin Falness tonight right here on The Fan. Thanks for listening to KFAN Wild Weekly. We'll talk to you next week.
For an extraordinary advantage in sports, you need a game plan. For an extraordinary advantage everywhere else, all you need is Acrisure. With a high-tech human approach to insurance, cybersecurity, and more, Acrisure helps you take care of what you care about. That makes winning easy. See what Acrisure's extraordinary advantage can do for you at Acrisure.com.